My name is Steve St. Clair. I'm the president of Conservative Patriots Group, the co-sponsor of this event. As is customary with CPG events, we always start our events off with a pledge of allegiance. Will you please rise, face the flag, and gentlemen, if you would please remove your headgear. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Mike Chambers is next, and he'll go ahead and get us started.
Thank you very much for coming to the debate tonight. My name is Michael Chambers. I'm actually the chair of the United for Liberty. I want to give you a little bit of background on United for Liberty and what that is. We're actually a very broad group of coalitions, parties, associations here in the state of Alaska. It was formed with David Cuddy and myself. And basically what we saw is we saw a lot of miscommunication going on, and we felt that all these associations and parties were being held away from each other on very small issues. And it was, in our estimation, it was important for us to come together and to start communicating and forming relationships. As you well know, many of the people on the other side of the political equation establish relationships through victim classes. And then they sell them on their politics. Too many years, people on the right have had a lot of the same ideas, but little tiny things that have kept us apart. And we're not going to get anywhere in this nation and in Alaska until we start communicating. And so I'm very proud to be part of United for Liberty. It's an open forum. If you, in fact, would like to be on the email list or come to an open forum, you can sign up outside, and what happens is you'd be getting an email, because we have monthly meetings that are a wide range of liberty issues. We believe in liberty, we believe in limited government, and we believe in physical management. And certainly those things aren't happening today, or in fact are eroding. And the only way that we can protect our particular liberties, those general interests instead of the special interests. We find that all too many times that politicians go to Washington, D.C., and what they represent is the special interests of special interest groups, when in fact they should be representing Alaskans and our liberties. So we're very proud to be able to have the opportunity to be able to have all of you here tonight to listen to the candidates and listen to how their vision is with regard to Alaska going forward, securing those things that are important. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to David Cuddy, our moderator.
Okay, no, it's not David Cuddy, not yet. It's me, Jim St. Clair. I heard one phone kind of jingle, so if your phones are on, can you please put them on vibrate so that we don't disrupt the debate. No, put mine on vibrate, put it back there so we become to play with it. Okay, again, before I turn it over to Mr. Cuddy, I want to briefly talk to you about being part of the solution. You take the first step in being part of the solution by coming out tonight to get informed, to get educated, to ask the pointed questions that you want. We can no longer rely on the mainstream media to provide us with information or even accurate information. And what we're going to do, what we're trying to do here tonight is help you get the rest of the story, as Mr. Paul Harvey used to say. A little bit about CPG. Conservative Patriots Group Incorporated is a grassroots, nonpartisan, for-profit, all-volunteer organization. As the president and CEO, I don't get paid. I do this because I enjoy what I do. I enjoy politics. I don't want to be a politician. Leave that up to these gentlemen over here. But I enjoy being involved, and I enjoy informing and educating people. We've been in existence since 2009, and we've had supported many candidates that have subsequently been elected to state offices. And we encourage the dissemination of information. We want people to be informed about what's going on. Now, how we determine if we're going to endorse a candidate is a vetting process. What we have done, including all three that you see up here and the fourth, were sent a survey a while back. They completed the survey, returned it to Conservative Patriots Group. We reviewed it and posted it online. All this information we found at our website. We looked at the surveys. They matched up with our 10 principles of conservatism, and we said, okay, these are candidates that we could stand behind, put CPG's name behind. We invited to our meetings, everyone except for Mr. Fish, who recently entered the fray, if you will, has been to one of our meetings, and we will coordinate to have him at one of our upcoming meetings in June. After they've completed the survey, they come to our meetings, they talk to our folks, and then what we do is we send a survey out to our members. This is only to our members. What our members do is they receive special emails, etc., access to the website, certain aspects of the website. They get to vote. They'll say, who do you want Conservative Patriots Group to endorse for the 2014 Senatorial, or which candidate do you want us to endorse? If the majority comes back for one candidate, we will endorse them. That's how it's done. It's not Steve's opinion, it's not Marvin's opinion, it's not Abby's opinion, it's our members. And what do our members get? Our members pay for service. The ability to make those votes, to make those contributions, get a coffee cup, a t-shirt, and an ideology that we are a conservative organization that is going to continue to vet the candidates as they need to be vetted on a nonpartisan, in a nonpartisan manner. At the end of the evening, I would ask on your way out, we do have a table out there if you'd like to stop by, sign up, become a member, make a contribution, get a coffee cup. Free constitutions, and pens back there, so if you don't have a pocket constitution, you can have one of those. And I think that got there a couple more pens. All right, on a final note, like Michael was saying earlier, CPG believes that we need to focus on the issues we agree on, not spotlight the issues we disagree on. We're going to tear our country apart if we continue to fight each other based on what we disagree on. We need to take Alaska back in our nation by coming informed and involved. An informed voter is a dangerous weapon against a government that violates its own laws. Now, you didn't come here to listen to me speak, but rather to hear the candidates for United States Senate. There have been a lot of times to take questions from the audience. Mr. Cuddy will delve into that a little bit more. Make your questions substantive. How many opportunities are you going to have your question go directly to a candidate, and you're going to be able to sit out there in the audience and look at them as they make their response? Substantive questions. We'll be sitting back there to make sure we don't get any duplicate questions, to make sure questions are in an acceptable format, because we're not going to read one up here that, whomever we think you're this. Questions, in the form of questions. All right. Lastly, thank you all for coming out tonight. I hope you leave this evening better informed, better prepared for this year's elections. God bless you. Here's Mr. David Cuddy.
We want to make sure that you all have cards. Who's the gentleman who's handing out the question cards? Right back there. So make sure you get cards if you want to ask questions, and make sure that they get back to our three-man table in the back here, because that'll be in the second half. We'll have a very short intermission, 6 or 8 minutes, and then we'll get to that part of the session. One of the things that I want to say, I've been a candidate before, and it's hard work, and you're attacked, you spend your time, you spend your money, all those kinds of things. And so for 2 reasons, I want to thank these 3 gentlemen. First reason is they entered the arena, and they are out there because they care about this country and they care about Alaska, and they're trying to convince you that you're going to line up with their positions. But the other reason is this is a very difficult forum, because this is a very informed group of people. These gentlemen are not going to be able to pull the wool over your eyes. You understand issues, and we're going to be opening up and looking at inside them to find out what do they truly think their vision is for this country, and how do they achieve that. And politicians try as hard as they can not to answer those kinds of tough questions. And that's what we're getting here. And so I just want to take my hat off to these 3 gentlemen, because not only running, but they're also going to allow us to ask them the tough questions. And we're going to get to know these people. in the next 2 hours. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As you fill out your questions, make sure you put the name of the candidate you want, and we're going to have an equal number go to each person. And every question probably is not going to have time to get all of them asked, but each candidate will have the same number of questions. Make sure they know who they're to. Let's see, we start out with a 2-minute opening where each candidate can tell a little bit about who they are, what their priorities are, what they think is important. And we'll start with a closing. We'll just work this way down the table for the opening statement, and then we'll go the other direction for the closing statement. So Mark, you're going to both sides. So, Meet, if you could take a couple minutes to just introduce yourself.
My name is Dean Treadwell. I'm our Lieutenant Governor, and I'm honored to be here tonight, and I want to thank the other candidates for showing up to debate. I believe these debates are very important. Today, I filed with the Elections Office to run for the United States Senate in 2014. I'm very excited about that. My son William was there with me, and William registered to vote, and my son Timothy was there with me. 3 things to know about me. First and foremost, I'm a single dad. We lost Carol in 2002. She left me with 3 children and a minivan. And that minivan had to go to Scouts, had to go to the ski hill, had to go to volleyball practice. And I'm very proud of my 2 Eagle Scouts, my varsity volleyball player. Those kids have raised me well. I also live in the real world. I'm in the sandwich generation. I have a mom who's dependent on Social Security. The second thing to know about me is that I'm a businessman. I'm primarily somebody who's worked to bring capital and ideas together and go after global markets. I was head of a company that started Street View for Google, as one example. Many other different companies, and I believe the creativity that we have in America is very important, and I've seen the government stuck on stupid from both sides. The third thing to know about me is that I've worked in Alaska for 40 years as a conservative on conservative issues, battling for Alaska for control of our fishing rights, battling for filling the pipeline, battling the feds and the EPA to bring decision-making home and to get the right things done. And as your senator, I am going to run and win on fiscal responsibility, on protecting our liberties. Government's job is to protect our liberties, not to take them away. But it's also to make that 49th star on the flag mean something. We signed up for self-determination, and we should be getting it. Thank you.
I'll try to stay out of the spotlight from above there. But when I sit here looking out at all you folks tonight, the first thing that really crosses my mind is, what is a kid who grew up on Mercy Drive out in Eagle River back in the 60s, spending 20 years in the National Guard, how does he find himself in this position tonight? You know, it's something that I did and that I take very seriously. I know we have a senator right now that was promoting himself somewhat as a libertarian, and I know there's a lot of talk about libertarians, and I look around and found out libertarians are not talking for themselves with the mic. So that's why I'm here, for the simple reason that I believe that an individual has a right to life, liberty, and property. And government's only role is to secure those rights. And unfortunately, what's happening now is our federal government, and in some ways our state, is actually working contrary to our rights. We have a rogue presidency, an imperial presidency, a Senate that is more interested in dividing up pie than they are protecting American citizens. And somebody has to stand up and question this. And this is why I'm running, and I plan on staying in it for the duration as long as the voting public allows me to. These things are important to me, but individual rights are important to us all, and it is the tie that binds us all. And I'm going to be promoting that and hoping that you'll be with me in that struggle. Thank you.
Anyway, you know, this is not about me, but I do want to put a shout out to my family. I've got 8 beautiful, wonderful children with a beautiful wife that's willing to put up with this thing again. And we went through that process in 2010. And why am I doing it again? Well, it's not because of me and everything I've done. It's because of you, and because you need to be represented. It's because we, the people, had the process hijacked from us by an establishment that basically is governed by both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, for crying out loud, for the past 34 years, 30 of those years, Republicans controlled the presidency, the Senate, and or the House. And what has happened? The federal government has continued to expand. We have a surveillance state that would make East Germany blush. In fact, President Merkel of Germany made the comment that she thought that we were as bad as the Stasi. We have a budget deficit that is continuing to be out of control. We have future unfunded liabilities of $200 trillion. Should we as the people throw in the towel, say the process has been hijacked, there's no hope, we have no future at all about being represented by our interests? My answer to that is absolutely not. We've got to give our children hope. Just like most of you in this room had hope when you were kids. You kids need to have the hope that I had as a child, that I have a better future than my father had. And I have, but now we're stagnating. Unemployment, high. Of course, we've got the budget deficit that could steal your future from you. If we're going to change this thing around, we've got to have the same attitude that Benjamin Franklin had. At the Constitutional Convention, there were a number of days where he struggled with the thought as to whether or not the country was going to be saved. And he looked at the back of George Bush's chair. He saw inscribed on the back of it, a sun on the horizon. He wondered to himself, is this a rising or a setting sun? When he signed the Constitution, he proclaimed with tears of joy streaming down his face, it's a rising sun. If we bind together as a people, we can make it morning in America again. Thank you.
Okay, well, we can reverse the order a little bit as we answer these questions. We've got 6 questions that we've got 3 minutes for each candidate to deal with that we hope will help open up to all of us to better understand how their minds work, how they think, and how they will act once they get into the Senate if they are so elected. The first question for Joe Miller. Many people believe that the federal government overregulates and has assumed power of the people that should be reserved to the states. Has assumed power over the people that should be reserved to the states. How would you rein back federal power and regulations, and would you advocate nullification in any case? Joe?
As to nullification, absolutely. I think governors should bind together, especially those in the western states that stand up to the federal government. We have to do that. Federal government, what's it going to do, invade? I doubt it. How else to rein in the feds, though? As a U.S. Senator, I have a role not only just to do those things that we need to do as a country, to push back against the federal government, but to also add to the bully pulpit. And we've had a number of things happen amongst the people that I think need to continue to be stimulated. Civil disobedience is critical in areas where tyranny is coming upon us. We have something called Pulpit Freedom Sunday. How many people have heard of that? It's where pastors each year, we're now up to over 1,000 congregations, are standing up and they're endorsing candidates. They're getting politically engaged because they understand that the First Amendment does not prohibit that. For crying out loud, the Supreme Court's going to say multinational corporations can fund political campaigns and federal contractors can fund political campaigns. We need to stand up and take back our rights as well. The people also need to be encouraged by the bully pulpit of the Senate to not just blindly support either party. It's the duopoly that's driven this country to the point that it's at. As your senator, I won't be co-opted. That's my promise to you. I stood up to the establishment in 2010. We've got to have somebody that has a backbone of titanium to stand up and say, hey, if we have to, we're going to shut down the government to stop what's going on. We've got to make sure that we aren't compelled by close personal friendships to vote against the interests of the people. That is exactly what co-ops those in Congress. That is exactly what drives this country to the point of bankruptcy and against your interests.
I sit on a Citizens Advisory Commission on federal areas here
Your mic turn on.
Sorry, folks.
I'll start.
Is it on?
I sit on the Citizens Advisory that in like federal areas.
And on that commission, which I've been on for about 7 years now, we get a host of testimonies from federal agencies. And they're all essentially trying to implement regulations at the will of whatever administration is in charge at the time. The problem is, when the administration itself decides, and it's not only Democrat or Republican, it's both of them. It's an imperial presidency that's not held accountable by the Senate. And what this has created is a condition where we have federal agencies that are violating the law in the regulations they implement. And when my commission calls them to task on that and questions that, they simply say, well, we just disagree, sue us. And who here likes to sue the U.S. government over violating the law? You know, the problem is we have a check and balance. We have notification right now. It's called the ballot box and the jury box. Number one, we have to have jurors that say no to our government officials violating the law. Number two, we have to have citizens that say no to electing officials that allow this violation of the law by these regulatory agencies. Republics die when you get a corrupt Senate that is more interested in taking a piece of the pie than they are checking the power of the imperial presidency.
Dave, thanks for your question. And I'll just say, when I started out this campaign, I said our slogan was bring decision-making home. The Democrats tweeted that was the worst slogan ever. They're going to wear that tweet. And the fact is, I am running to bring decision-making home. I was schooled coming to Alaska about 40 years ago at the feet of Alaska's statehood founders. People like your dad, others, your grandfather, people who worked very hard to make us a state. Because the idea was we were going to get more than a star on a flag, more than not having to show our passport when we went to Seattle. But we got some land. But then they keep wanting to take away control of our fishing game, control of our land. I've got a three-part plan as a senator to help turn this around. Number one, there are a number of bills in the states, in the Congress right now. One that's already passed the House that will transfer federal land to the states. There are other bills that would transfer the development rights to the states. There's a new sagebrush rebellion brewing, and there's very many practical things that we could do, and we worked on that. Number two, and this may be the newest idea here, is that no federal land use plan should be effective in Alaska unless the state agrees. It's those big, thick plans on federal land that they use to say where you can go, where you can't go, what you can do and what you can't do. And states need to stand up and call for participation in this on public land. They tried with coastal management to tell us that we should make our rules stiffer with the feds. This would allow us to tell the feds, bug off. Finally, I guess I'll say it's time to shut down. We'll talk about this much more. But I want to sit on the Environmental and Public Works Committee. The EPA has been running roughshod over Alaska's interests, running roughshod over our rights as a state, and it's time to push back. Our senator does it now, I will.
We've got to stick to 90 seconds here in order to get through this whole format. Question two, we'll start with Meade. Congress has a 15% approval rating by the public, yet 95% of incumbents get reelected. There's a voter disconnect. As Tim O'Neill says, all politics is local. How would you get the voters to seek the survival of our nation or our children rather than prioritize their own special interests?
Dave, thanks. I want to thank everybody who came out to be here tonight. I want to thank CPG and UFL for hosting this debate. I'm very disappointed that two candidates who appear to have collected the most special interest money are not here tonight. for three things. We need to stand up for a free society. We need to protect liberty at home and have a strong national defense, second to none. We need a moral society. We need to strengthen the family with every policy we can. And we need a productive society. I've said I've taken products to global markets, and I've seen the government stuck on stupid. We need to get the government out of the way, and it needs to be competent, which they're not now in Alaska, in pushing development while protecting the environment. We should incent innovation with tax policy rather than squash it. As a special interest, I'm going to try to make Alaska America's special interest. We're coming up on the 150th anniversary of the Seward's Purchase. We are not Seward's Folly. We are worth it. We are worth it to America for energy. We're worth it to America for defense. We're worth it to America for food. And we're worth it to America as free people who know how to live in freedom under the American flag. And that's the special interest that I want to make sure everybody else has in us.
Hey, how would I get the voters to seek survival of our nation for our children? I won't. I can't. That's up to the voters. That's up to the people. You know, what I can do and try to do is foster the idea that self-interest is not selfish interest. We as a culture have to move back to depending on society instead of a government to take care of our problems. I point to the wonderful happenings down on the Kenai Peninsula with the fires. You know, I'm so proud of the fact that my nephew, Thomas Fish, had volunteered without any prompting or anything, just hopped in his own truck, went down there and said, what can I do? Pitched in and relocated and evacuated people for 3 or 4 days on his very own. That's the kind of spirit that we need to foster in our country if we're going to manage our own affairs. If we don't manage our own affairs, other people will. And I trust you folks out there to do that. What can I do? If as senator, I can find a way to make those folks down there of just getting out of your way and leave me alone. You can do it. We don't need them. We've been independent most of our lives, and we can continue that way.
I've actually seen some polls that showed it in single digits. I mean, congressional approval is low, in part because the process, like I said earlier, has been hijacked. When you've got a crony capitalist state that basically is at the whim of the special interest, we're talking about multinational corporations, we're talking about special interest money, you can only end up with that kind of a negative attitude. You know, what the first has to happen is we got to make sure that people actually have a choice they can vote for. In a lot of elections, you end up with an establishment candidate, you know, big government Republican or a big government Democrat, right? The big government Republicans out there saying all the things that itching ears want to hear, but in reality, when you straight back the veneer, you find out they're just like all the rest of the big government Republicans. They go to Washington, D.C., they join the special relationships, and they continue to expand government. That's exactly what we saw in the Bush administration. It's exactly what gave birth to the Obama administration. Obama administration, of course, far worse than the Bush administration, but it's this idea of going to the people, basically misdescribing who you are, misdescribing your history, and then expecting to actually have a change. And people grow increasingly negative and skeptical. Second, people need to hear the truth. Now, we've told the truth to you before. Warned that the debt crisis is worse. I warned of 2 debt downgradings that's happened. I predicted a significant loss of federal funding to the state. It's happened in spades. We have, in fact, I was called an extremist for those positions. And now, today, what do we see? We see Murkowski saying it. We see Begich saying it. We see even some here at the table saying it. It takes far more than carrying a constitution. It takes far more than election year pandering and rhetoric to make the change. It takes people like Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul to stand up to the establishment and say, we're not going to take it anymore. Thank you.
Joe, we'll have you lead off. Question 3, the federal budget is way out of balance, currently at $600 billion a year, much higher if you include the unfunded liability annual expenditures. 2 parts to finding a solution include stimulating the economy and employment, and reducing the dependency and federal expenditures. How would you accomplish these parts to your solution to the deficit?
Now, the biggest obstacle right now to economic growth and higher employment is the collusion of big government and big business. You know, Milton Friedman's right. I'm going to give you a short quote from him. The only effective cure is to reduce the scope of government, to get government out of the business. If government is prohibited from engaging in activities which can benefit special groups, then those special groups will not have any incentive to go to Washington. You know, many of the GOP is axiomatic that if it's good for business, it's good for us. You know, that's a false precept. Milton Friedman said he wasn't pro-business. He said he was pro-free enterprise, and I'm pro-free enterprise. Now, policies crafted for big business and the special interests that send the big government Republicans and Democrats to D.C. are bad for us. Guess who's created the jobs? Since the mid-'70s, small business has created 66% of jobs. Small businesses, and by the way, I own 3 small businesses. I've been a small businessman for years, and I know what it takes to meet the obligations of the business. In addition to that, 55% of all jobs right now in the United States are small business. How do we get there? How do we create the engine for the small business? Abolish the IRS, the fair tax. I think it's also important to note, one of the other factors that's at play here is we have strong internationalists that want to equalize income amongst the nations. That's part of the political process. They don't like America to grow. Think about it.
Well, I have to agree. The ending of the IRS is probably the biggest thing we can do to stimulate the economy on the face of the earth. Yeah. If you look at it, for the last 100 years that we've been under that system, it has destroyed society. It's destroyed incentive. And it's actually given people incentive to act in ways that society was never intended to organize. You know, government is too big, and society has abdicated their role. I'm a firm believer what Thomas Paine said is that there's a difference between society and government. And what's happened now is we have forgotten that difference. And I want to emphasize that that's a big difference. And society is where all the good from you folks and us come from. And government should be here only to ensure our rights and to defend them. So that's the case for ending the IRS. And also the other component of that will be the balanced budget amendment. You can cut the head off the snake, but it just gets more desperate when it's not fed. So we have to actually have a solid case and hold them accountable to it in balancing the budget.
I'm running for office because Washington, D.C. spends too much. It taxes too much. It borrows too much. It prints too much. It meddles too much in our affairs. And it snoops too much. And government forgets that the main job of government is to protect our liberties. We saw this with the vote on Obamacare. Mark Begich was the 60th vote. And the effect of Obamacare is to tell the young people in this audience, that you may have student loans to pay. You may have a retirement to build for. You may have a down payment on a house that you want to do. But no, you've got to pay more for health insurance you don't need. And that was government run amok. I agree with what Mark has said about a balanced budget amendment. And I'll make this promise to you tonight. I will not vote for any debt extension unless I also have a chance to vote on a balanced budget amendment. The fact is, even Mark Begich has sponsored one with Mike Lee, but it won't come to a vote because they don't want it. So we're one of the first states to call for a convention of states, and I support that. The last thing I'll say is this. If Dan Sullivan were here, I believe he'd have to defend that he's being supported by an organization that's spending $50 million right now to push Common Core down the throats of people all across America. I'd like to see him answer for that, and that's why we need full debates.
Our next question lead off with me. Who a person associates with speaks volumes about their core principles. If you are elected to the U.S. Senate, what 5 senators would you likely align with, and who would be your first and second choice for your leader of the Senate, given the Republicans take back control?
Thanks. Well, historically, I enjoyed being a page and working with guys like Barry Goldwater, meeting Jim Buckley and carrying his constitutional amendment down the rostrum on Roe v. Wade. Studied Daniel Webster, Henry Clay, worked with John Kyle on missile defense. In becoming a candidate, I've gotten to know some of the people in the Senate a little bit better than just reading about them. I met with Mike Lee on statehood compacts. We very much agree on that. Utah and Alaska and other western states should be working together to support our compacts. I put together a constitutional amendment with others in our Constitution that passed in '96 to stand up for the deal that we made when we entered the Union, and we're not the only state that's being overrun. With Ted Cruz, we talked about budget and spending and Obamacare. And with Rand Paul, privacy and liberty. And I support his suit on privacy. And I honestly believe that we have to make sure the government is not snooping too much, not collecting data, not violating the 4th Amendment to the Constitution. Kelly Ayotte is a new senator from New Hampshire. I've worked together with her on missile defense and defending the country. And finally, Jim Inhofe is worked very hard to fight environmental extremism. I'm proud to have his support. I disagree on many things with Senator Murkowski, but she has fought hard on King Cove, on Anwar, and on Alaska issues. And I look forward to working with her as well. And as far as the Senate leadership goes, I just have to say this. Some of those people are running for president. I'm not sure who's going to be running for Senate leader, but I'd be happy to work with any of the ones that I named.
Well, this is where the libertarian gets to be a little different. You know, I don't look at aligning with any certain coalition of senators. Frankly, I looked down the list of senators and tried to pick 5, and I couldn't find 5 there. I did come up with 3 that are fairly close, you know. Paul and Cruz and Lee obviously have been doing pretty good. You know, could do better, but they're doing pretty good. If I had to go for one of those for speaker, I think I'd go with Mike Lee, simply because Utah is probably the only state in the union that's got a bigger federal footprint than Alaska, and he gets it. And this is a very important issue because we've proven in court already, for Wally Hickles, it's already proven in court that the federal government has violated Alaska statehood compact. They just said there's no monetary damages assigned. So we have them, we prove it, but then again, we're back to that same old thing. What are you going to do about it? You know, sue us to death, sue us until the United States is over. So it's going to take you, the people, to provide the motivation for Washington to change. And I hope that this is the start of it, breaking that 2-party monopoly.
I'm having trouble finding 5 too, Mark. And I agree. I think that Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Rand Paul are solid. I have to look outside of where we're at right now and reach out to some others that, with your help, can get elected. That includes Ben Sass, great guy. I think he's going to help the cause. And Chris McDaniel, again with your help. You know, these races, they're a national effort. I mean, people that love the Constitution, that want to invest $25, $30 like they have in our campaign, all across the nation can help return this country to its foundations. And I think those 5 will do a great job with, of course, Joe Miller from Alaska. As far as speaker goes, we don't know who's going to run. Obviously, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee ran. I'd be there in a heartbeat for him. I've met with Mike Lee a number of times. I've met with Ted Cruz. His dad, Raphael Cruz, is actually in the state right now doing some great work around Alaska. I will tell you, this election, this is a twofer. I don't know whether Murkowski for life. You just heard Mr. Treadwell speak about his friendship with her. That's admirable. I appreciate friendship. But the fact is, you've got her for life, folks, depending on who you elect in this election. We cannot afford that. This country cannot afford that. We must elect constitutional conservatives, return this country to its foundations, and save the nation.
Joe, I don't understand, but I'll say this. I have many disagreements with Senator. Got it. Okay. Joe, I am a friend of Senator Murkowski's, and she is our senator. I'll tell you, as your lieutenant governor, you want us to have a relationship with our senator, because we sure can't count on Mark Begich for anything. That's number one. Number two, the voters of Alaska made a decision, and we are working with our delegation. And I've told Senator Murkowski that there are many issues that I will disagree with her on, but we can work together for Alaska. And I think we have to have a unified delegation that works together. Right now, we have a senator who's putting press releases in, putting bills, is not working with the delegation or with the state in any effective manner, and it's time to change that.
Our next question, what would you consider to be reasonable gun control? You're all pro-gun. Is there the question is gun control. I think all three are basically pro-gun, but the question is, would you accept or support any limitation on that gun control?
Well, speak to all of you, I guess I'll just say this. What part of shall not infringe do they not understand?
Give her the mic, Mark. Yeah.
What part of shall not infringe do they not understand? I believe your right to self-defense, I believe our right to self-defense is a God-given right. And it's not up to government to take that away. I saw a sign at a gun rally recently that said, "I carry a gun because a cop is too heavy." Now, Mark Begich claims to be pro-gun, but every session so far, he's voted for Harry Reid. When you vote for Harry Reid, you get Michael Bloomberg's agenda. You get Dianne Feinstein's agenda. You get Chuck Schumer's agenda. And that's why we have to replace Mark Begich, no matter what the NRA says about him. But I am proud of the A rating I've received from the NRA. Now, one other thing that I'll just say. I went to Sandy Hook Elementary School as a kid. My mom was a librarian there, a school bus driver. I went back and joined up with 1,000 alums of that school. And before a crowd much larger than this, I said, we're going to solve this problem with acts of kindness, not acts of Congress. We have the highest suicide rate among young men in this country here in Alaska. And we have to figure out how to reach out, how to intervene with people so that we get them, the lost souls, before they want to take their own lives and others with them. And that's mental health first aid. My kids went through elementary school, anti-bullying after Columbine, and I seriously believe that after Newtown, we're all going to do a much better job of reaching out and helping our fellow people to keep it safe and keep it peaceful.
Let's see if this one works over here. I'll just keep that. They can have some. Okay, I'll keep mine short. I made a few notes on this because there are instances where you should probably restrict access to firearms. One is unsupervised children, for obvious reasons. prisoners, again, for obvious reasons, and criminally insane. All those are good reasons to restrict. But I would add another one there that, at the hesitation of being redundant here, is I think we should ought to start disarming federal agencies, regulatory agencies. The Library of Congress has got no reason for a SWAT team, folks. Absolutely not. You know, if they need a cop, maybe they should follow their own advice and call one.
I've been a gun enthusiast all my life. I started out with BB guns and moved into .410 shotguns and 22s, and finally when I graduated from high school I had a 30-06. My mom finally entrusted me with that on the plains of Kansas. Then I went to West Point, shot onto the rifle team, and I couldn't get enough of it, so I became an armor officer and acquired the biggest guns you could get, the 20mm main guns and the M1A1 battle tank. And ended up shooting high in the 1st Infantry Division when we were at Fort Riley, and then in Desert Storm, of course, and we were credited for one of the first destroyed Iraqi patrols in the neutral zone. I'm now a gun collector. I've been endorsed by the Gun Owners for America, National Association for Gun Rights. I'm an avid gun collector. I'm a benefactor, life member of the NRA. I have been endorsed as an NRA A rating. But here's the clincher. I understand that the Second Amendment is not there to protect those hobbies and those interests. It's there to threaten tyrannical government. That is purpose. And we've got a government that has all sorts of issues with, in fact, Mark pointed it out. We've got billions of rounds of ammo that's being taken up by regulatory agencies. We've got the post office and other groups that are arming their agents. It's crazy. I propose that we cut, cap, and divest. What do I mean by that? Cut civilian government supplies of ammo and unnecessary weaponry. Cap how much they can have, and then divest by selling off all that ammo to the general public. That's my proposal.
I think the short answer is that we don't hear a whole lot of restrictions that you would see on the Second Amendment. The sixth question, Joe, we'll start out with you. Americans may disagree. Okay, sorry if you weren't hearing me. Americans may disagree on many things political, but they agree that the country is headed in the wrong direction. If you were in charge, what is your vision for America that you want to leave to the next generation? And in a few words, what action steps would we need to take to achieve your vision?
The number one priority is to end the horror of abortion in this country. That's number one. We've slaughtered 56 million children in this country, and it's even worse than that. You know, part of our technology has been involved in the 1 billion plus that have been slaughtered worldwide. It is something that we will reap. In fact, we are reaping right now the consequences of it. We have a country right now that we can't keep up on the Social Security demands. Why? Because we've slaughtered generations. Literally. This is something that we have to address. Rand Paul has gone straight. Life at Conception Act. It needs to be made the law of the land, where life at conception is protected. We must honor and protect the most defenseless in our country. Or else, what else do we have? We got to get rid of Obamacare. That doesn't mean just mealy-mouthed phrases. That means we can sign Obamacare. We're having a government takeover right now of our healthcare system, which is going to kill this country economically, and it's literally going to kill people. It is forcing doctors out of the business. I mentioned before, we have to abolish the IRS. The fair tax is a great way to do it. It is imperative that we end the surveillance state. The surveillance state must end. If you want to secure this country, let's start with securing the borders and end the rhetoric about the border. We need to audit the Fed and create a stable monetary supply and put this country on a firm foundation for the future. That's a little bit of where I'd start.
Well, I think Joe's vision of what he laid out is pretty laudable, and there's not much more that I can, anything in there that I can disagree with. But I will say that my intent would be to overall reduce the size and scope of government. And that means all government. That means federal government, that means state government, and local government. You know, protecting individual rights means individual responsibility. You know, if we can run our own lives. We don't need other people doing it for us. We can make our own agreements with people, and we can enter into contracts and mutually consent with each other, and it works just fine most of the time. When it doesn't, that is a proper role of government, and that's probably the only role of government. So we have to get back to a constitutional, limited government, and anything that would move that the ball in that direction, I would be supportive of.
A little over 200 years ago, we founded a country. The American founders, in the Constitution, in the Declaration of Independence, did something incredibly revolutionary in looking at the natural rights of man. And I believe that is good news, fresh news, new news today, because in human history, we've still had, most of human history, we've been under the control of kings. We're coming up under the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta next year. 114th Congress will meet during that, and I think that Congress needs to look at what limits to government we do anew. It's absolutely essential that we stand up for the Bill of Rights and for the liberties in this country. We're not going to have a country if we keep spending more money than we have. And we have to have fiscal sanity and a balanced budget. We need a strong defense. I don't like hearing from the military that we've been pushed offshore by the Chinese. I don't like being in a situation where Vladimir Putin is doing what he's doing, not only in Crimea, but in the Arctic. And I think America has to be strong again. And we're going to be strong again by unleashing the power of American ingenuity, by incenting innovation, by fixing the tax system. And that does mean eliminating the IRS and going to something in the way of a fair tax or a flat tax that gets all Americans involved.
Make sure that you get your questions filled out, because our trio up there will be going through them shortly. We're going to go through the lightning round with very brief answers to some of these questions, and then we're going to take about a 6 to 8 minute break, and then we'll come back and finish up the second half of the program. Meade, we'll start with you. Very quick 1 or 2 word answer. Do you believe the Federal Reserve is constitutional?
I believe it should be audited. I don't know if it's constitutional. It's withstood so far, but I believe it should be audited, and I don't like the idea of printing $1 trillion a year worth of money without any congressional authorization.
Mark?
No.
Absolutely not.
Next question to Joe. Do you support any form of term limits?
I'm sorry.
Term limits for the...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, they're all 3 yes. Okay. Micro problems. Me, starting with you, would you support a balanced budget amendment?
Yes.
Mark?
Absolutely.
Joe?
Absolutely.
Next question to Joe. Generally speaking, do you support any form of the Law of Sea Treaty?
Absolutely not. Never have.
Hello? We can't have Law of the Sea Treaty until we fix Law of the Sea Treaty. Alaskans fought hard for the 200-mile limit. We fought hard to get our territory in the Arctic. We fought hard for freedom of navigation. And I've talked to both sides on that treaty. Both sides agree that we need those things. but the problem with setting up UN, tax, world government, we're not going to have the treaty until that's fixed.
Back to me, do you support jury nullification, which would give jury the ultimate jurisdiction of the law, not judges' narrow instructions?
No.
Mark?
It's not up to me to support it, they have.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do support.
I'm sorry about the microphones. You just have to speak loudly. I think everybody's really keeping their noise down and intent on listening to what you have to say. So if the mic doesn't work, I think people are leaning forward trying to hear. Joe, do you support voter ID laws?
Absolutely.
No problem with voter ID laws, yes, I would support.
We can't require a voter ID, in my opinion, because we can't issue an ID throughout the state. But we certainly require identification or some other form. We have other forms of verification that we use right now in running elections.
The next question, would you support the U.S. leaving the UN?
Yes.
Mark?
Not only leaving the UN, but having the UN leaving our...
Yes.
Joe, next question. Do you support public education at the federal level?
Absolutely not.
Other than the IRS would be the first one to eliminate.
Federal government does not belong in education.
Me, next question. Do you support Common Core?
No.
The only curriculum that should be approved is one between parents and their teachers.
No.
Next question, do you support any form of amnesty regarding illegal immigrants? This is tough.
Absolutely not.
No.
I support strong borders, and I support getting to a path for some of the folks who are here and seeing the others go.
Next to me, do you believe the current policies of the IRS demanding individuals to dedicate personal time and treasure is a violation of the 13th Amendment under indentured servitude?
You only started on the IRS. I've got a lot of problems.
Hey, David, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah.
Do you believe that the current policies of the IRS demanding individuals to dedicate personal time and treasure is a violation of the 13th Amendment under indentured servitude?
First time I've heard the idea, it sounds good to me, but actually the IRS needs to go in its current form. And we need tax revenue, we don't need the IRS, and the way it's been politicized and the way they have made conforming to tax policy just almost impossible for most Americans.
Well, there's many forms of servitude, and of course that's one of them. But I would also like to take the time to remind people that property taxes as well. To me, especially in the state of Alaska with the Constitution that we have, is basically shifting the constitutional obligation that the state has off onto the private citizens, and that is horrendous.
Dave, I don't know. Abolish the IRS. That's my answer.
Joe, the next question. Do you believe that the 16th Amendment, which allows for personal progressive income tax, was ratified by 3/4 of the existing states at the time of ratification?
Do I believe what?
What was the 16th Amendment passed in a legal manner?
Was it passed in a legal manner?
Yes.
It is currently the law of the land, but it was not passed in a lawful manner.
This goes to the question of nullification. Folks, the voters is the largest jury. If the voters tolerate it, the government official is going to say it's legal. You know, and if you don't reject it, they're going to continue to say it's legal. You can look at the history and say it's wrong. A lot of the things that Wilson signed into law, we don't even know if it was his signature. You know, yeah, it probably wasn't passed right, but the fact that we've accepted it for 100 years, folks, it's legal. If you want to change it, you got to change it.
I have a finished idea.
Okay. Next question to Meade. Would you support the removal of the 17th Amendment, which would remove the popular vote for senators and return that decision to the respective state legislatures?
No. I will say this. I believe that we are doing right now what we should be doing to elect a senator. At the same time, I will be a senator who will respect the role of states, and those who favor getting rid of the 17th Amendment and giving it to the legislature, in my mind, that's not going to happen. It's not a democratic process. It's a democratic process. But we've got to figure out some way to make sure that our senators understand states' rights and stand up for them. I will.
Well, what happened is we got a Senate that is basically representing corporate interests instead of the interests of their respective states, and they're acting accordingly. You know, can we repeal the Second Amendment or the 17th? You know, that is very likely that that probably won't happen, but it can. And the only obstacle of getting it back to where the states have representation in Washington through their Senate is to do that, and the only obstacle to that is the public. Can we convince the nation, 2/3 of the states, to do it by constitutional means? And if we can convince 2/3 of the states to do anything by constitutional means, we can do it, plain and simple.
Are we beyond the yes, no, maybe phase?
I'm sorry?
Are we beyond the yes, no, maybe phase?
Try to keep it short. I'm begging everybody, we're running out.
This is an area that I'd like to expand a little bit on because I understand what happened with the 17th Amendment. But here's the reality. We as conservatives, we as liberty-oriented people have a limited amount of time and effort to apply. We have to apply to those areas where we can move things forward. You can change the representation of this state. You can do things that actually have a major impact on the direction of this country. And those are the areas that we have to focus on.
Okay, yes or no to the next question, Joe? Are you or have you ever been a member of the Council of Foreign Relations?
No. I've never had anything to do with them either.
Well, I do know what they are, but no.
No.
Okay, we've reached the halfway point. We're going to take a 7-minute break here and get up and stretch and get your questions over to the table back there so we can get them after the break. You submitted were answered throughout the course of the program so far, so that helps us quite a bit. I've not read these yet, but I've been told that they're excellent questions, and our crew back there, if we could have a round of applause for their effort. Thank you for your help. So we have 3 questions. We're going to have 90 seconds for each one of the responses. Again, if any candidate mentions or says any negative comment about another candidate, that candidate will have 30 seconds to respond. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first question to Joe Miller. Should Anchorage renegotiate the statehood compact? And I think that's been talked about a little bit already tonight.
Should Alaska renegotiate?
Should Alaska renegotiate its statehood compact? 90 seconds.
Well, I think the statehood compact needs to be complied with, and I think also under an equal footing doctrine, Alaska should be in a much better position than it is now. This kind of gets to the point of the Constitution, whether or not it's sufficient to allow the state to move forward. My belief is it is. I mean, we have the capacity. If the federal government were out of the land ownership business, which is something that is not constitutionally authorized except for at military posts, embassies, and other limited areas, we'd be in control of a resource base. Of course, that's only half the solution. We also have to obviously get the state on board to ensure that we can get significant development that goes on. Independents can actually be free to produce, similar to what we've seen in the Dakotas. But the Constitution is sufficient. It is not right for us to be a serf. That's essentially what we are. We effectively, with the amount of land that we currently have under federal ownership, cannot conduct our own affairs. The statehood was intended that we have the capacity through our resource base to actually provide for ourselves. We should have the lands back. There are a number of things that can be done kind of on an interim basis. For example, there have been proposals to actually allow the state to lease land from the federal government to produce. That's certainly one step, but I believe that the feds need to be out of the land ownership business. And this is not pie in the sky stuff. What we have right now with the government shutdown that occurred several months ago, we have a new view of Americans that the federal government is involved in things it shouldn't be. They saw the retaliatory action of the Obama administration in that regard. The Bundy Ranch standoff. Again, it kind of enlightened Americans to where we're at with the federal government, basically taking our resource base from us, and especially in the western United States, and the need for us to move forward free of federal control.
Next question for Meade. What will you do to stop Obama's executive orders?
Take away his phone and his pen. In all honesty, electing a Republican Senate so that the Republican House and a Republican Senate can actually pare back federal presidential power several different ways. Number one is we've got to pass a budget, as our civics book tells us that we do. And we've delegated that power to the president too many years now. We have to be able to defund him when he is doing the wrong thing, which is what we should have done on Obamacare last fall. And finally, again, if you have a House and a Senate that work together, we can vote to overrule some of those executive orders. A congressman and a senator and a citizen, for that matter, in some cases, has the standing to go to court. I support several of the current lawsuits that are going on right now, and there's more that can be done.
I'd like a 30-second rebuttal, since I'm the only libertarian referred to the Republican Senate.
No, you'll get a chance to begin your closing statements. I don't think it was really an attack on you. The next question for Mark, and you may have to refer to your book. What is the Fourth Amendment, and what would you do to restore Fourth Amendment rights?
Fourth Amendment, you know, I don't view the Constitution as something I memorize. It's a textbook. I refer to it all the time. Well, thank you. And securing the possession of papers. You know, number one, that goes to the property issue. You know, they ensure that, you know, you have it. This only ensures it, right? The first of 9 of those amendments are about individual rights. The 10th refers to authority for the state. You know, they felt so strongly about individual rights that they had to reaffirm it outside of the constitutional document into the Bill of Rights. That includes electronic, folks. You know, you have a right to be secure your web browser. You have a right to be secure in your email, your phone calls. This is all covered, you know, and it is undersold to the point where it's non-existence. The Fourth Amendment is not the only amendment that they've chosen to ignore. You've had Supreme Court justices and lawyers make bad decisions, and those bad decisions become precedent, and that precedent erodes your liberties. But there is only one way to fix it, folks, and that's the public has got to be aware enough to send good folks that will adhere to that Constitution and hold those unelected officials accountable.
Next question, again from Mark Fish. How much of my income is the federal government entitled to? Sounds like a setup question.
Oh, boy, that is definitely a setup question. You know, it's property. Your income is basically your hard work and labor that you put into a natural resource that becomes yours. It's property, folks, and nobody's entitled to your property except you. Now, there is consent, you know. I consent to give some of my property up to get the road outside of my house improved. I chip a little in the pot with my neighbors, and we go ahead and fix the road. That's done by consent. I also consent for our overall defense. You know, I don't have a problem with resources. Me consenting some of my resources in order for the proper role of government to be fulfilled. You know, libertarians are not anarchists. We are for limited government, and there is a difference. But it has to be done by consent. And what we have now is a government that has gone way beyond consent and treating us like serfs in our own land.
This next one looks like it's already been asked and answered, but I guess Joe will give you a chance to talk about it a little bit more. Do you support federal term limits?
I do, but that's not the only problem. I mean, we have a much more severe problem than just term limits. When you look at, for example, what happened in 2010 and 2012, we had what has been referred to in the press as kind of a Tea Party revolution in the country. We had something like 90 House members join what we call the Tea Party caucus. And yet I think it was in 2012, we had 23 of them vote against the debt ceiling increase. So what happened? I mean, these are folks that just got in Congress. Has the lure of power been so great that they got compromised in that short period of time? Some of them just a year, not quite. There are a number of factors that are at play. When we have folks that go to D.C., they get compromised by many things. You can have the personal relationship that causes people to do things that are against the interests of the people. You can have the fact that you're compromisable. In other words, there's dirt on you. So somebody says, hey, you know, I'm going to let this leak out if you don't vote this way. It could be the staff. You know, they may say, hey, we're going to do something with your staff. There are all sorts of pressure points that people have. What does that tell us? We've got to elect people that have nothing to lose, or they will be compromised. That is what's happened in this country.
Thank you. Next question from Meade. What Senate committee has the most power to move America back in the right direction?
The Judiciary Committee can make sure that we have people on the Supreme Court who believe in the Constitution, who believe in our Bill of Rights, and will look at the Constitution in the way the founders intended it. I believe that's a very powerful committee. I believe the Finance, or the Budget Committee and the Appropriations Committee have to balance the budget. They have to take responsibility. They actually have to bring bills to the floor that can be amended so that we don't spend more money than we have. I believe the authorization committees need to go back and look at the federal agencies and the whole morass. There's over 500 federal agencies that we created. Figure out which ones are constitutional to begin with and repeal those that aren't. So, you know, in the House, it's really the Rules Committee. In the Senate, it's unfortunately the leadership right now, the way Harry Reid has done it, because he's taken away, he used the nuclear option. He has not allowed amendments. He has not allowed a democratic process to take place. And so I'd say change the majority leader, change control of the Senate, and make that Budget and Appropriations Committee do their job. Do not give them the power to spend more money than we have.
Next question for Meade again. Where do you stand on Pebble Mine and how to handle these projects on a federal level?
Well, where I stand on the Pebble Mine is where I stood when I stood before you as a candidate for Lieutenant Governor and with the governor. I said we're not going to trade one resource for another. Let's look at the Pebble Mine though. It is on state land. It's on land that all of us own. It's land that we got with our statehood compact. It's land that we put out for exploration, and dang, Somebody found $500 billion worth of resources there. They have the right to go through a permitting process. And Mark Begich and the EPA want to shortcut that process, take science out of the equation, and just say no. Now, I oversaw the permitting of the Fort Knox mine when I was at DEC in the early 90s. I saw the beginning of the permitting for the Kensington mine. I believe firmly in mining. My family actually had a lot to do with starting big mining in Alaska. He later went bankrupt, so I didn't inherit any of that. But I guess the point I'm making is this, is that mining is the future of the state. And if we can't offer certainty to investors, if we're going to allow the EPA to misuse the Clean Water Act, we're going to have big problems. So I support the Manchin amendment that would actually take away that power of the EPA that they've abused here and abused in West Virginia. And I support a role for the EPA where they support states with expertise and the states make the decision on what happens in state borders.
Next question we have for Mark Fish. Do you believe public employees should be unionized?
I believe public employees have the same rights and privileges as all Americans to the right of free association, which means if they choose, I myself was a federal public employee, and the system that the federal government, I think, can work in the state government too. This is every year I get to choose whether I want to be in my union or not. It holds the unions accountable for what they do, and make sure that they provide a good. I have a right to choose not to be in the union, as well. The union negotiates the contracts for the federal employees, and they honor that contract, whether you're in a union or not. But if you're not in a union, you don't get union representation for grievances. I think that system is fair and works. Free association is important, and people have a right to organize any way they see fit. But no one should be forced to organize against their will. It's the coercion in the system that we have today that is absolute injustice, and it needs to be corrected.
Next question, this is the last question in this segment for Joe. I understand that if you are not selected as a Republican candidate in the primary election, that you will not support any other candidate. Will you please explain your position?
I've never said that. In fact, excuse me?
That's right, I agree.
Yeah, I've never said that. In fact, I'm not sure where that's coming from, perhaps the opposition. What I said is I am not going to make a commitment to those that decided to get behind somebody that looked Alaskans in the eye, that's you, and lied to them. There has to be a basis of trust before you make an agreement with such individuals. We'll wait and see what happens. I intend to be the Republican nominee. That's my intent. With your help, it's going to happen. But the reality is, those of you that think anybody but Begich is your mantra, that's a fool's errand. This country has been destroyed by both parties. We have got to turn it around. And bringing somebody into that position that's going to go along, get along, not be a fighter, that's going to make compromises here and there, because, we got to get something done. They are not going to be the people with the backbone of titanium, necessary to stand up to the party bosses, necessary to stand up to the big corporations, the multinational corporations, all those folk waiting in on the super PACs. That's not what you need here. What we have got to have as a people, for my future, for my kids' future, for my new grandkids' future, is to have people that are willing to put it all on the line and say, we aren't going to take it anymore. We're going to fight with everything in our power to shift the power back to the people under the Constitution and under God.
Okay, we go to the next part of this program. We're moving right along. Thank you, everybody, for cooperating, and we may get out of this at just the right time. Candidates get to direct questions at any other senatorial candidate, including candidates who are not present. the person directing the question to will have 60 seconds to answer, 30 seconds for the question. So we'll lead off meeting with you.
Thanks. My question is for Dan Sullivan. I don't see an empty chair, but, you know, Dan, my question is, where are you? You know, you haven't been in Alaska very long, so let you in on something. Alaskans expect to have their candidates hash out their beliefs in forums like this. Yeah. All right? Let's take the show on the road. Yeah. And what's so important that you couldn't be with us tonight? I understand you said in Fairbanks that you just found out about this yesterday. The rest of us agreed to this, and we're all invited, I think, on May 5th. Yeah. All right? And this isn't the first one that we ducked. That you ducked, Joe. You know, I know you had an event last Saturday, but we were asked in January to be at a fisheries debate in Kodiak. 50,000 Alaskans work in the fishing community, right? Alaskans have grown to expect a senator to understand that. I want to bring decision-making home, but much of our fishing happens outside the 3-mile limit. And we've got to work on those issues.
30 seconds are up.
So my question for Dan, real simple, is will you stop ducking debates and join us around the state, side by side, to show Alaskans our vision and our experience?
I'd like to.
Next question.
I'd like to rebuttal on that.
Wait a second. Were you mentioned in the...
Yeah, I was called out, but that's fine. The Alaska fisheries debate that Mr. Treadwell noted, Lieutenant Governor Treadwell noted, was something that happened in fact, April 19th or April 21st when we launched our campaign meeting, and that was on Patriots Day. The record's clear as to what happened there, but Kodiak is incredibly important, as is the fisheries. In fact, I was there all day on Sunday, talking to people who are very engaged in the fisheries process, talking to a guy that has 100 employees with the fish processing plant down there, talking about the problems that the trawlers have created, talking about the problems with bycatch. This is an incredibly important issue for our state. I'm fully engaged in it, and I'll tell you, I mean, I'm happy to debate anytime, anywhere, on an open forum like this, you name the day.
And 30 seconds. Okay, and Mark, the next question.
Okay. Well, let me start with Joe here, you know. Just to fill people in this, you know, I worked on those in 2010, and there's a lot of suggestions that I might just be sitting here as a proxy for Joe. And I want him to clear this up. Joe, as chair of the Alaska Libertarian Party, I've tried for about 18 months to convince you to run as a Libertarian. I noticed that you haven't registered yet. I would like to know, are you going to register as a Libertarian and run against me in the primary?
Mark, we're trying to make up our minds. I gotta touch you in a second.
Okay, Joe, you've got the next question.
I mean, you know, you've already asked the question about dam that I think was appropriate. I thought the sea treaty ought to go forward with some tweaks. You are aware of the fact, of course, there have been 60 ratifications. There have been, I think, 157 nations have signed on to it. So it's pretty much impossible to change the treaty. But I'm going to ask you, in light of your support for the law of the sea treaty, your support for Agenda 21, the climate change agenda, participation in Arctic environmental protection strategy, your membership on the Global Agenda Council, your participation, not membership, but your participation in the Council on Foreign Relations. How do those conflicting loyalties clash and those agendas clash with your statement here today that you're a constitutionalist in your past statements that seem to reflect that you're a Tea Party guy?
Joe, thanks for looking into my record. I hope when you stated correctly in the future. But I will say I have been involved in this because something that's happening right now in our lives that we all have to be aware of. The Arctic is changing very, very quickly. What was once ice is now water. And because of that, we have to protect the food supply of Alaskans. We have to protect the safety of our shorelines. We have to protect the security of our country. And that has changed quite dramatically in the last 10 years, and I'm very proud of the role I've had in the Arctic in helping wake up America and the world to the opportunities there. Now, when I walked into the door of Foreign Relations, and I'll just say that, my uncle, who was one of the best conservatives ever, told me, don't be part of that organization. And I thought, you know, Ed, you must be spinning in your grave as I walked through there. But I went there to tell them that we need to lead in the Arctic as a country. We need to lead in the Arctic and push back on their position. We need to lead in the Arctic and make sure that our claims to the Arctic Ocean bottom are taken care of. We need to lead in the Arctic and not let Russia be the troll under the bridge controlling shipping as it goes through the Bering Strait, and there were 60 ships that went through last year. We need to lead in the Arctic and push back as I have and insist that Russia give us their bycatch numbers so that we can manage our fish in our rivers properly. Now, Joe, I'll just say this. If you're going to be in government, you're going to need to be able to work with people to make things happen. And I will tell you that I have promoted Alaska's agenda here and abroad to make sure that we are part of the decisions that are being made in the world on how this new ocean operates. And to make sure that Alaskans who go whaling for a living are protected. To make sure that Alaskans who go fishing for a living are protected. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done in this area, and I'd invite you to join me in any of those meetings. I think you'd find that we're mostly in agreement.
Let's see, well, Mead, you get another question?
Well, Joe.
I don't get a rebuttal, Mr. Kennedy?
No, you don't get a rebuttal. We asked for that and we were told no. So.
Now, the form is no rebuttal, but you still get 1 minute at the end of the show to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Awesome. We'll try to fit it all in. I'll talk real fast. Go ahead, Mead.
Joe, we ran both in the 2010 election. We both ran on a conservative agenda. We both supported Prop 2, parental notification. I called for a change in oil taxes and making Alaska more competitive. While I've been Lieutenant Governor, we've worked on education, we've worked on school choice. There's many people here who promoted a constitutional amendment, promoted vouchers. We've gone to bat against Common Core, and we've had a huge effort against federal overreach. And I guess my question in this, in the last 4 years, where were you? We would have loved to have had your help.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Lieutenant Governor Treadwell, you have two responsibilities, the Division of Elections and the SIL. With respect to the Division of Elections, you know that of your citizens, many of whom are sitting here today, there were dozens of affidavits filed about problems in the Division of Elections. I and Matt Johnson sat in your office and called for an independent oversight of the Division of Elections. Instead, you chose to do an internal oversight, one akin to the Department of Justice investigating itself. Still today, we use diebold machines, which are banned in the state of California and other places. Still today, at the precinct level, anybody can destroy a ballot. Anybody can. And there is not confirmation of any type that has any credibility. This state also discovered, of course, under your leadership, that there were thousands of people registered to vote in the state and out of state. These are the type of things that we expect a leader that's in charge of the Division of Elections to address. It's your sole responsibility other than the SIL. We were obviously working very hard to activate the base. I'm not a millionaire like you are, me. I've got a law practice. I work 3 different businesses. My family has to be supported. But I did have an opportunity to travel to Israel, had an opportunity to travel to China, had an opportunity to establish at times the second most read news site in the state of Alaska, Restoring Liberty. I did those things to expand freedom in this state, to ensure that we have a second voice, another voice, other than the establishment media, other than the dispatch-controlled ADN, yes, other than the other outside-controlled media that dominates this state, so that all of us could have a voice. And it's something important to freedom to make sure that we have a free exchange of information. Those are things I've worked very hard for. They've made a major impact in this state, and they've also brought some degree of accountability, such as the accountability that I'm suggesting here in my response. That's what I've been doing.
You get your last minute, you can say whatever you want to say. Next, Mark. Question?
Well, I was going to question meat on modesty, but I think it's been pretty much hashed out. So I'm going to ask you the question that I asked Mark Vegas when he was running for mayor. And a woman came up to me and said that was probably the most telling question that she's heard somebody ask. So I'll ask it to you. Do you own a firearm? And if you own more than one, what is your favorite?
I've had the most fun with my shotguns. Yes, I do own a firearm. But our family enjoys bird shooting, target shooting. I will say that Tim here is probably the best treadwell shot in the room. Natalie does very well, and William and I are competing for third. But we're having a great time.
Okay, Joe, last question. I'm going to beat up on you again, Pete. Is that all right? We're going to talk about this big town.
That was his question. That's good.
Well done. But I'm not going to let you off the hook. That's it. There are different stripes of Republicans. And in fact, there are a lot here in this room that hold obviously clear differences of opinion. You've already mentioned your support for Lisa. I understand that. I certainly don't agree with it, but I understand it. You also, of course, served as a co-chair for Mitt Romney in 2012. I said on John King in early 2012 that was almost a certain loser because he didn't provide contrast with Obama. In addition to that, you supported other folk, including liberal Democrats like Sheila Selcraig and Matt Clayman, both who were involved with the proposition here on gay rights. In fact, there are two folks and one local radio talk show host referred to with four others as the Socialist Six. How can you support moderates and liberal Republicans and also liberal Democrats against conservative challengers and yet still call yourself a conservative that can be trusted to make the right decisions?
Joe, the first thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to say this to everyone in this room, everyone listening, I was elected with a governor on a limited government agenda to help bring decision-making home, help fight the federal government, to help reform our oil taxes, to help to get to a deal on a gas pipeline, help diversify our economy, help support Alaska families. And I believe we've done that. We've kept our promises. And I worked very hard on that. I have, in the past, there are two people, Matt Clayman, his kids and our kids grew up together. We're a member of the Rotary Club. I gave him something in the order of $100. I don't support him for a state house, and I certainly did not support his agenda on the Assembly. Sheila Selcraig worked with us at the Institute of the North, okay? And my wife and she did a Toys for Tots Christmas toy drive. Again, I gave her a very small contribution. We live in a town, Joe, where I think it's important that people know each other, work together, and you can be friends with people without checking your principles at the door. You can, I don't think there's anyone who questions my fight with the federal government, that I've worked with people like Wally Hickel and many others on for many years to make sure that we bring our rights home. I don't think anybody can question where I stand as a pro-life individual. My mother, I was conceived out of wedlock. My mother could have chosen something. I thank her every day for the fact that I'm alive. And the fact is that I have stood on school choice and constitutional issues. And when I asked the question, where were you? There are times we could have used your help on this issue. We really should have a change in our Constitution and get rid of the racist Blaine Amendment. And we need help, and conservatives need to stick together. And if I have lines of communication with people across the aisle, I'm not going to apologize for it 1 minute. Because I will tell you, as a conservative, what we have to do is convince others of our cause and not isolate ourselves from society, because if we're going to protect freedom, we have to win the support of more Americans to make our freedom happen.
Okay, we're now in the final, and actually we're doing pretty well. Let's expand this to 2 minutes to give you just a little bit more time to do a little bit of rebuttal that you might have thought you didn't get a chance to, and to just kind of make whatever points you think are important. And again, I thank everybody for helping us move this thing right along. We've covered lots of material tonight. So we'll start with right in the middle. Mark, why don't you start?
Okay, well, it looks like I'm in the middle, right? But realistically, you know, something that me pointed out and said that we need a Republican Senate and a Republican House and everything move in the right direction. We've had that several times in my lifetime, and this is where we're at now. You know, every time it's a vote against somebody, we got to get rid of baggage at all costs. That's not the case, folks. We got to change the way that we're doing business. And how are you going to do that? You know, it's a big question. How are you going to do that? Well, you've got to break this two-party monopoly. A lot of it is an election reform. You know, it's very hard for a third-party candidate to maintain ballot access and get out here in these debates and be credible. The system is rigged against it, and I could go on a long time and point by point in election law where it's rigged against anybody but the two-party incumbents, but that's another story. What I really want to talk about is libertarians. What is a libertarian? A libertarian is someone who holds to free will. That's an 1847 Webster's Dictionary definition, and it's very simple. And folks, whether you realize it or not, if you make your own choices in your life, you're a libertarian. And that's all we want to do. That's all. We want to essentially get there and prevent people from making choices for you. You can make your choices better. You can control your own destiny. You know, you have, like as I stated, you have the right to, the individual has the right to their life, their liberty, and property. And all three are just as important as the other. They must be maintained. And government really was only instituted among men to protect and ensure those rights. We don't get those from government. They're ensured by government. So I am a libertarian, and I have no intention of dropping out of this race. I'm here as long as the public allows me to be here through the voting process. Hopefully I'll go on to the general and we can have that discussion more. But I have every intent of following this through the end. And just wanted to make that clear, regardless of the friendships that I've established with both me and Joe, that I'm here as a libertarian, I'm running as a libertarian, and I hope to have your support. Markfish.us is the website. Thank you.
Go, you're next up.
I want to thank you for the evening to express position. I think this has been a lively debate. I think it's been valuable. I hope that you're able to carry the message back to your homes and to your community, and that also we get a broader audience through the videotaping that's been done. We'll try to post some of this hopefully on Restoring Liberty, which is actually a site that's promoted a number of very pro-liberty things, including school choice. I want to first mention that, you know, I think we have an opportunity here not to opt for crumbs, but to actually go after something that could restore this country. I've known Meade for a long time. In fact, I was an attorney, I guess almost 20 years ago. Would have been around 95. I like Meade. I genuinely like Meade Treadwell. I do. He's a nice guy. He's much nicer than I am. I don't think he has as good a sense of humor as I do, but you know what? I'm not going to vote for Meade. I'm not going to vote for Meade because we don't need nice guys in Washington, D.C. We don't. You know, there are so many pressures hitting us right now, and we don't know when the shoe's actually going to drop, but at any time, it could. I mean, $200 trillion future unfunded liabilities, $17 trillion of debt, And the club just keeps spending and spending and spending. And it is a club. I mean, when you have 23 vote against the debt ceiling increase. But you know what? There's light on the horizon. People like Mike Lee and Ted Cruz are out there sounding the alarm. Single-handedly, Ted Cruz changed the debate on Obamacare. And why? Because he's not a go-along, get-along nice guy. That's true. He's the type of guy that will sit there and filibuster as long as it takes. You know, when he was filibustering, and we put out a press release in support of it, one of the things that our team was talking about, Joe, you know, if we were up there, what would we be doing? I said 3 times as long. And my team that's almost as sleepless as I am, and therein lies the reason why I said George Bush and not George Washington earlier. For those of you who caught that, the fact of it is that we will work tirelessly for you. This is not for some game or to go to Washington, D.C. I hate Washington, D.C. You know, I'm not going to buy some nice little house out there and get comfy. You know, this is a position that we've got to get things changed immediately. This is not something where we can sit around and figure out what we're going to move forward, you know, what deals we're going to make. You know, the only deals I'm going to make are with those members of the Senate from the West to wrest control back from the federal government. And we have an opportunity to do that as long as we don't have go-along, get-along people that we elect. We cannot do that. We've been there, done that. This is a 2-for race, folks. You like Murkowski, you got it. This is not about 2010. This is about our future. We cannot tolerate. We must move forward for liberty. Thank you.
Well, Joe, I like you too. And I will say that there's a couple of places where you should correct your facts. We did do an independent review of the elections. We did have a fair election, and we have worked to make our elections even fairer, and we've done a lot to help bring the military vote home and make that accessible. So I just want you to know that. But let me just say to the people of Alaska, what's very important as you select our next senator is you remember that this is our seat. It's not Ted Stevens' seat. It's not Mark Mega's seat. It's not Michael Bloomberg's seat. It's not Karl Rove's seat. It's not Harry Reid's seat. It's our seat. Now, when we send somebody to represent us in Washington, let's send an Alaskan who knows Alaska. Let's send an Alaskan who's not only great at the rhetoric, but actually has a record. And if you look very closely at the record, you'll find that I'm a conservative who has gone for results. That I've worked 40 years in this state to help us win where we needed to win. We won statehood. And then they want to take away control of fish and game, or they want to take away control or access to our land. We had an Alaska Lands Bill in 1980, and I helped fight for access in that bill to be able to make things happen and continue to happen around here, and I still fight today. And there's another candidate who's not sitting here who could have learned some more when he took on that fight as our DNR commissioner. You need to know the history. You need to know the state. We fought for a 200-mile limit because the foreigners were raping our resources. And the 200-mile limit, law of the sea, was one of the tools to get there. And I'm not going to be washed out why we've worked to do this to create the jobs. And now we have a situation in Washington where it is time for a new sagebrush rebellion. And I'm just not talking about getting Western states together. I've been working with my colleagues in Western states. We've got bills in Utah and Idaho to force the issue on ownership of land. In the Arctic, the Yukon, right next door, got all their crown land in the last 5 years. The Northwest Territories got it the 1st of April. Even Greenland got it in the last decade. We will bring decision-making home, and we will stand up for conservative principles. We will build on our record and on our history. We're going to win this race, and Alaskans are going to send a senator to Washington. Thank you.
We have a nice round of applause for all three of these wonderful candidates. Great.
3 minutes. 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 3
did the best job in our debate. They all did a